Good evening, everyone. My name is Christina Wigren, and I am with Stilly Valley Health Connections. And thank you so much for joining us for tonight's class on rediscovering yourself. For everyone who is joining us live, please note that this class is set up in a Zoom webinar format. This means that all participants are muted and your videos are turned off so that we can record this presentation. However, if you have any questions or comments, we encourage you to leave those in the chat box or the Q&A box so that you can engage. Both of those buttons are at the bottom of your screen. Now I will pass it over to Camille Harris with the Women and Family Wellness Studio, who will be presenting on tonight's topic. Thank you to Camille and thank you to tonight's participants for joining us. We hope that you enjoyed this class.
Thanks, Christina. Hi, everybody. I'm so glad you're here for tonight's presentation. I'm really excited to be doing this workshop for women. So I'm your presenter. My name is Camille Harris. I've been a counselor for over a decade, working primarily with women, children, and families in social services. And I'm currently enrolled to complete certifications as a sex therapist and sexual health educator. I own a behavioral health practice in Snohomish County called Women and Family Wellness Studio, where we provide counseling, evidence-based parenting classes, in-home postpartum support, and workshops on adult wellness and parenting like this one. So some of the things we'll be covering today are what are societal expectations for women? What causes women to disengage from themselves? How do you want to feel? What is not working versus what is working for you? Transformation versus obliteration of self. How to continue to come back to yourself, self-actualization, and then putting this in practice. So to start this off, I thought it was really helpful to look at what are typical female roles in the United States, and looking back to the early 1900s, the first about 40, 50 years of the 1800s, women's primary roles were to take care of the children, to take care of their husbands, to take care of all domestic duties in the home. This was when the suffrage movement was just starting, where women's rights were starting to be addressed. Things like voting, the right to work, the right to be able to have a voice over their body and what happened to it. However, work at that time was still scrutinized for women, and the work that they could find typically had lower pay and less rights than their male counterparts. Women were not welcomed into the workforce until 1941 during World War II, when most of the men were off at war. Birth control was introduced around this time frame and provided some autonomy to women. What women wore at this time was relatively standardized, and there was little to no makeup and beauty standards for the majority of women. There wasn't the vast variety that we have out there right now. So then we look at today, 2025. Women, are still often mothers. They're still the nurturers of the family, typically. They're still the caregivers of the family. But roles and expectations of women have changed, and yet also still rooted in the past. So in some parts of our culture, there's an expectation that women are passive and submissive to their husbands. And even that piece, husband, has changed since the early 1900s. In the early 1900s, the only family structure acceptable was a male and female husband and wife. And now we are moving into not just heterosexual coupling, but lesbian coupling, gay coupling, different types of coupling happening. Another expectation is that women are confident and self-assured. However, we also know that that can be seen as negative, like she's full of herself, she's overly confident, right? So it's hard to know where that balance is. There's a lot of women that are really driven to have a career. They're working on building a career and being a working professional. And that oftentimes involves going to college, whereas the early 1900s, um, very few women were actually going to college. We're still expected to be very involved, if not fully responsible for the child care. We're still the ones that are predominantly running the households, getting the groceries, making sure meals are prepped and ready. So that load of the domestic duties still oftentimes falls very heavily on the female. And we're oftentimes the decision makers of the home, and we are responsible for the budget and the bills and being the calendar holder. If you have children, there's oftentimes, a lot of different things going on for everyone in the home. And we're also at the same time trying to dismantle gender stereotypes and at the same time trying to uphold our feminine qualities. We want to be seen as females, different than women, but also not less than, fighting for equality. There's also this expectation that we're tender and soft, going back to that nurturer, that caretaker, but we're also really firm and we're assertive. And then there's endless expectations about what our hair should look like, what our makeup should look like, what aging looks like, what we're dressing like, and what does that mean? There's so many expectations and standards out there of what a woman should look like, be like. So versus early 1900s, it was just not that the expectations were so different. So we've come a long way and really added a lot of load to what the female roles are. So we're going to watch a video called Be a Lady, They Said by Cynthia Nixon to get a sense for how this can feel for women. Good.
Be a lady, they said. Your skirt is too short. Your shirt is too low. Be a lady, they said. Your skirt is too short. Your shirt is too low. Don't show so much skin. Cover up. Leave something to the imagination. Don't be a temptress. Men can't control themselves. Men have needs. Look sexy. Look hot. Don't be so provocative. You're asking for it. Wear black. Wear heels. You're too dressed up. You're too dressed down. You look like you've let yourself go. Be a lady, they said. Don't be too fat. Don't be too thin. Eat up. Slim down. Stop eating so much. Order a salad. Don't eat carbs. Skip dessert. Go on a diet. God, you look like a skeleton. Why don't you just eat? You look emaciated. You look sick. Men like women with some meat on their bones. Be a size 0. Be a double 0. Be nothing. Be less than nothing. Be a lady, they said. Remove your body hair. Bleach this, bleach that. Eradicate your scars. Cover your stretch marks. Plump your lips. Botox your wrinkles. Lift your face. Tuck your tummy. Perk up your boobs. Look natural. You're trying too hard. You look overdone. Men don't like girls who try too hard. Be a lady, they said. Wear makeup. Highlight your cheekbones. Line your lids. Fill in your brows. Lengthen your lashes. Color your lips. Powder. Blush. Bronze. Highlight. Your hair is too short. Dye your hair, not blue. That looks unnatural. Look young. Old is ugly. Men don't like ugly. Be a lady, they said. Save yourself. Be pure. Don't be a whore. Don't sleep around. Men don't like sluts. Don't be a prude. Don't be so uptight. And smile more. Pleasure men. Be experienced. Be sexual. Be innocent. Be dirty. Be the cool girl. Don't be like the other girls. Be a lady, they said. Don't talk too loud. Don't talk too much. Don't be intimidating. Why are you so miserable? Don't be a bitch. Don't be so bossy. Don't be so emotional. Don't cry. Don't yell. Don't swear. Endure the pain. Don't complain. Fold his clothes. Cook his dinner. Keep him happy. That's a woman's job. You'll make a good wife someday. Take his last name. You hyphenated your name. Crazy feminist. Give him children. You don't want children? You will someday. He'll change your mind. Be a lady, they said. Don't get raped. Don't drink too much, don't walk alone, don't go out too late, don't dress like that, don't get drunk, don't smile at strangers, don't go out at night, don't trust anyone, don't say yes, don't say no. Just be a lady, they say.
Okay. I get chilled every time I watch that. So I would love to hear what kind of emotions that evoked for anybody. What did it bring up for you? And I definitely want people to engage if they feel comfortable in the chat section. So what emotions did it bring up? Was anything in that relatable for you? Do you think these expectations affect how women feel about themselves? And some of those expectations, those that women have, are things that I didn't even have on that prior list. It certainly was not all inclusive of what is expected of women today. One of the ones that really stood out for me is whether to have kids or not. Back in the early 1900s, that wasn't really a choice. It was an expectation. That was a part of a woman's role. So you can see from that video, it really well represents all of these expectations. A lot of them are very contradictory and conflicting. We're supposed to be two things at once. And it really puts women in this position of feeling just this huge mental load. And we'll get into what that means. Excuse me. So, and I like to read the words on the slides because people have different learning styles. So with so many societal expectations, it can be very challenging for women to have a true sense of identity, to know how to pull apart who they truly are, what they want and desire versus what society tells them they are and should, quote unquote, should want and desire. For mothers beyond that, they're often stretched so far beyond their limits that they don't have time to figure out who they are outside of their assigned roles, and then are led to believe that there's something wrong with them for feeling tired or overwhelmed, overworked, wanting more, when there isn't even enough room for more. But women still find themselves that they do want more and they don't know exactly what it is, but there's a yearning and a deep desire for some type of more. And that feeling of wanting more when there's already too much can feel like emptiness in your body, but also like this yearning, this aching, this just really deep desire. It can show up as apathetic towards life or simultaneously as like this inner rage, this agitation, impatience for what's not there. And even if you cannot articulate what it is, but something definitely feels missing. And oftentimes these are words that women can't even put it together in words. It's just this feeling of there needs to be more, I need more. Something doesn't feel right. I don't feel complete, even though I have all these things that society says I should feel complete. And some women feel that what is missing is them. They've lost who they are in all of life's responsibilities, and at the same time, maybe didn't discover who they really were in the first place. They just followed the societal expectations. And the more we look towards societal models of how you should be, the more lost we can feel because we haven't found ourselves. We see what society tells us we should be, and that's different than our true authentic selves. And so thinking about what causes this disconnect, aside from those obvious things we just talked about, those contradictory expectations that are really unrealistic oftentimes, social media plays a huge role in showing women how they should look, how they should feel, what they should be able to accomplish. Oftentimes, religion can impose huge expectations on women about conformity, like how much skin they should show or shouldn't show, and what gender they should be attracted to or not attracted to, and what does it look like to be a good wife or daughter, or how to behave. There's oftentimes a lot of shaming used in religion to submit women into behaving a certain way, specifically pertaining to their sexuality, their sexual expression, not doing it in a healthy way. Peers oftentimes will really, women can tear each other down and really pin each other against each other. So that can have a negative impact on women and cause that disconnect. It can create some isolation that can occur. And then lack of built-in support. We in America our families are so broken up and spread all over the place, and we just don't have the same family structures we used to. And then a lack of honesty with one another as women about, what your life experiences are, and competition with women. So I'm a mom to three boys. They're 16, 15, and 12. And I remember thinking back to all the phases of life, thinking, why does no one talk about this? Like, what happens to your body after you have the baby, that your boobs like swell up to your collarbone. Like, I didn't know that. No one told me that. Um, or like now I'm in perimenopause and there's changes happening to my body where I'm like, why didn't anyone tell me about this? Why isn't anyone talking about this? And that's very common for women to go through these different phases of life, and there's just not these real, raw, and honest conversations. So, these things just further perpetuate that disconnect of women feeling connected to self and really feeling an authentic expression of self. And then we want to consider the mental load. So it's a very real consequence for women due to having so many expectations of them. The mental load is an invisible cognitive and emotional impact on women due to managing and coordinating too many responsibilities and relationships. So this is a great example. It does feel like this. It feels like juggling a couple dozen balls and trying to keep them all up in the air at the same time. So if you're a parent, there's always forms you have to return to school. There's always, trying to raise responsible children. So that's how to assign them chores with the chore chart. All the appointments you have to schedule for you, potentially your partner. A lot of women take over the role of caretaking for their partner like it's a child, like it's another one of their children. I can't say how many women I've worked with who say to me they feel like their husband is another one of their children because they have to schedule their appointments, wash their laundry, fold their clothes, all of those things. Ordering, pet responsibilities is an example shared here, ordering the groceries, helping kids with homework, respond to emails, and then wondering, why am I so tired? And this is pertaining to organizing blood tests, but like women are often feeling tired, and then you add to it childbirth and lack of sleep, or depending on your age, you add to it perimenopause, where your hormones are really shifting and that's adjusting your quality of sleep or just your energy levels. Or if you're in menopause, again, like that's still perpetuating a change that's affecting our mood and our energy levels. And on and on and on. Just that mental load for women is much, much, much higher typically than men. We do not, on average, have an equitable balance of workload pertaining to home, childcare, work, all of those other expectations. And then if we consider mental load, especially for moms with younger children or multiple children, and they are at the same time trying to have a successful career. So the built-in support for moms is not what it once was. Families are spread out. Like I said before, a lot of families are broken up. There's about 50% of the families are divorced. There's less community engagement due to our calendars being so full. Because all the kids have all the sports and activities and there's school obligations and dental appointments and doctor appointments. And if your kids are in counseling or someone is, unrealistic expectations of things like birthday parties, gender reveal parties, weddings, what your home is supposed to look like, what your vacations are supposed to look like. What a birthday party looks like for a kid now is very, very different than what it would look like for a kid 20 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago. I mean, it's just they're over the top now. The balloon things and gender reveal parties were not a thing when I had kids when they were younger, and now it's an expectation oftentimes. And we didn't have access to images of other people's homes the way that we do now. And so it creates this expectation of, well, my home should look like that because their home looks like that. And then a lot of women wear busy as a badge of honor. They really like to tout how busy they are and look at what a great job I'm doing with all of that, or live in woundology, which is a victim mentality because they're so busy, but also not taking steps to find some balance in their life. And oftentimes these women are not meeting their own needs due to self-awareness, lack of self-awareness, or the lack of support, and just an expectation imposed upon us from society that this is how it's expected to be. There's a couple comments in the chat section. Anger, exhausting. I'm not seeing the slides, just the speaker. Oh no. Okay, let me stop sharing and then reshare again to see if that'll help you. But to speak to the comment of anger and exhausting, yes, I resonate with that. Both of those feelings. I hope that fixed it. Can everyone else see the slides? Yes. Okay. So, yeah, this is really frustrating because if you're a woman, you understand the truth to this. And I really, really appreciate that Stilly Valley was willing to do a workshop just for women, because this is something that only we are going to really relate to and understand. And I feel like I can be more candid about it without worrying about the men being here. Not putting down men whatsoever. It's just our reality is different than theirs. So, oops. So I could go on and on about that part of it. That's just a very quick overview of like what gets women to this place where they are feeling really exhausted and not connected to themselves, and maybe feeling inauthentic and just burnt out and exhausted with life. Parental burnout is a very real thing. So then we want to get out of this place, right? So we first want to explore, how do you want to feel? So you don't like how this feels, and we just gave you a good explanation of what can lead to that. But we want to now focus on, how do you want to feel? And I love this quote. It's so beautiful. Knowing how you actually want to feel is the most potent form of clarity that you can have. Generating those feelings is the most powerfully creative thing you can do with your life. So, first, this can be a hard exercise for a lot of people to do. So what's helpful is to first reflect on some moments that depict what you don't want to feel. What emotions are there? So we just saw quite a few examples of things that don't feel good, but thinking of some personal ones. If you have any examples, please share. But I'm trying to think of one really quickly of a personal example that led to any of these feelings. When I have a lot of work to get done and the expectation is that I'm also going to have dinner ready and respond to the teacher's emails. And I have the groceries in the home for all of that. Like, that feels really overwhelming to me at times. But those negative experiences, some emotions you can feel are depleted, rejected, a feeling of voidness, sad, irrational, out of control, ashamed, agitated, colorless, deceived. And then we want to look at the positive opposite of those emotions. So the opposite of depleted is restored. The opposite of rejected is acceptance. The opposite of void is validated. The opposite of sad is happy. The opposite of irrational is rational thinking. The opposite of out of control is in control. The opposite of ashamed is to be proud. The opposite of agitated is to feel calm. The opposite of colorless is colorful and expressive, and the opposite of deceived is truth. And so that's what we're going to be focusing on next is getting to how do you want to feel. So if we dig deeper, thinking about how do you want to feel about your body, your wellness. And when I say your wellness, I mean your physical health, your your muscles, your body shape, your weight, your lung capacity, like everything internally and externally. Your rest and relaxation, so how much sleep you're getting, how much downtime you're getting, which a lot of times we're told that relaxation it's not just saved for vacation. That's not true. That should be a part of every day. Your mental health, your sensuality, your sexuality, your relationships romantically, your relationships with your friends, relationships with family, coworkers, and then people in the community, like the grocery store checkout person you see every time you're there, or the librarian that you see, or your banker, like people we know in the community. And how do you want to feel in your career? How do you want to feel in your relationship to money? How do you want to feel about work? How do you want to feel about your home, your aesthetics? So meaning like your hair, your makeup, your face, your um, lotion you pick for your skin, your interests, your self-expression. How are you expressing yourself? Hobbies, your faith, your spirituality, your intuition. How do you want to feel about all these things? So an exercise you can do is on a piece of paper, write body at the top, and then write feelings that you want to have in that area. And then another piece of paper or a different part of the same piece, wellness. Write down all the feelings you want to have for your wellness. For rest and relaxation, those might be two different categories for you or one and the same. I think they're two very distinctly separate categories. I think your sleep is different than when you're actively relaxing. And so on and so forth. So each one of these areas, you're going to write words to describe how you want to feel. So I've done this exercise before and I pulled my own words that came up for me. So there's a lot of words here. Colorful, zealous, creative, secure, generous, safe, abundant. And what you're looking for is repetition in each category. You're starting to look for a pattern of a feeling, similar feelings in each category. Okay. And some people, when they do this exercise, the challenge can be guilt creeps in. Like guilt or shame, actually, both can creep in for people. So if someone's doing the relaxation piece, they might feel guilt for wanting more of that, for if they want, let's see, what's a word for relaxation? If you want an abundant amount of relaxation because you feel like your life is so fast paced, some people might feel guilt for that. Or for your sexuality, if you want to feel more expressive in your sexuality, more expansive in your sexuality. A lot of women in our society are trained and taught to have shame around having that desire. Like it makes you dirty somehow, but our bodies are designed to have sexual interactions and expression. We have an organ, the clitoris, that is only function is for pleasure. That's its only function. Men don't have that. So our bodies are designed for that. And yet a lot of women in our culture have been taught to have shameful feelings around desire. And so, noticing when those emotions are coming up, what you're wanting, what your desire is, notice those emotions, honor it, recognize it, and still put those words down that you really want to feel for each category. It's really important that you're being honest and putting down what you want to feel, not what someone has told you you should feel. And this can be for some women, depending on the category, a really, really eye-opening and a grieving exercise too. So like with your romantic partner, if the words that you choose are desired, loved, and comfortable, and you are in a marriage or partner with a partner where you don't feel desired and you don't feel a lot of love and you're not comfortable with them anymore because there's been a wedge drawn between the two of you because of all of the family expectations, or you've just fallen apart for whatever reason, that can be painful. And still put down those desires that you have. What are the feelings you want to have in each of those categories? Any thoughts or questions about this? If I'm relaxing, I feel guilty because I'm not doing something productive. Yeah, that's a huge one. A lot of women face that. A lot of women face that. But you saw how many expectations are put on us. Like there's almost no room in the day for us to even feel like we can relax. And so we have to give ourselves permission for that. And we'll talk about how to do that. But a lot of women struggle with that. Another reason for that for some can be a trauma response from a childhood where your needs were not acknowledged. Like you grew up in a home where children's emotions didn't matter, their needs didn't matter. You're just a child. That tends to happen in like, I was gonna say older generation because that's kind of my age range-ish. Not the 20s and below, I would say. So, and we were taught that you just kept moving. We were not taught to pay attention to our bodies, cues and clues and our emotions, what's our emotional needs telling us. We were taught to just keep going. So we have to unlearn that. We have to teach ourselves how to pay attention to what we're needing. So that's part of the reason why. So after you've done that exercise, you want to pick the top 3 to 6 words that come up most often for each area to depict how you want to feel. These are what we call your core values and core desired feelings. You'll use these values, the values that these emotions hold to you to begin making decisions for yourself to create positive changes in how you show up for yourself, first and foremost, and then for the rest of the world. So, this can be a process. This can take a while. This isn't a quick exercise. I would encourage you to take your time with it, really sit with it. And what I did, I've actually done this exercise a few times, is I would look for familiar, like similar words and just thought patterns, and I would circle the ones that are similar and then cross out the ones that were maybe only like on 1 or 2 lists. It's not that those ones don't matter, but you're going to really see similarities throughout all of the lists. And that's going to help bring you to your core values and desired feelings. You have to be so honest with yourself when doing this exercise, though. Really honest. And if you're not, like, most adults know about 6 emotions on average, and there's quite a few more. And so if you have like a feeling, but you can't quite come up with an emotion for it, then use Google. Type in word similar to excited. Look for the synonyms of excited. Just use Google to help you find some more words. And I have a tool in a little bit also that can be helpful. So once we get these words, like what are our core values, our core desired feelings, on a sticky note or index card, you're going to write down affirmations for each of these feelings. And these 3 to 6 words are a really big deal. This is a really big deal for you to actually identify, like, this is how I want to feel. They're not just words. This is how you want to feel. And you're doing this exercise because you don't like how you're feeling, right? You want to move into your more authentic self, feel like a real expression of who you are. And so do this next part with a lot of love and nurturing yourself and really seeing it as like, I'm honoring myself right now by putting words to what I desire. So, sticking out index cards, writing down those affirmations for each feeling, and our affirmations are going to be specific. brief and written in the present tense. So my 3 words, audacious, safe, and gosh, I can't remember the third one. It eludes me right now. Oh my gosh, it's later on. But my affirmation is I am beautifully audacious. I am safe. Uninhibited. That's my 3rd word. I am always uninhibited. Okay, so we're writing those down. And then we want to keep it out where we can read daily to change our thought pattern and internal beliefs about yourself. You can also just write it on one piece of paper, whatever works best for you, but you really want to have it written down. There's something that happens in our cognition when we put a thought to paper, and then when we have repetition, we're changing our thought patterns. So oftentimes when we're having those opposite feelings, the opposite of audacious, for example, the opposite of safe. If we're living in that truth of those negative emotions, those negative beliefs, we have to, with intention, change that thought pattern and that belief of self. And that's what the repetition with reading is going to help with. I just was at a training this morning that talked about repetition in recovering from trauma, the importance of repetition of that safety, repetition of the thing that you know to be true about today, not in your past. So this is a really important piece of moving on to the next step. So we also want to create rituals with these affirmations and our core desired feelings. So again, this is really like cementing this into our subconscious, our conscious, and changing our thought pattern. So sit with those core desired feelings while imagining what each area of your life looks like as you begin to embody your entire existence around these core desired feelings. Give as much detail as you can to what that would look like and journal these thoughts and feelings. So, for example, like I said, my 3 words are audacious, safe, and uninhibited. What would it look like to parent? I'm a parent. That's something that's really important to me. Audaciously while feeling safe and uninhibited. So taking my kids to go on hikes I wouldn't normally do, but I take time to research safety measures and prepare my body using affirming self-talk of my ability to do this. I don't worry about how I'll look doing this, only on the experience this will create for my children, my relationship with them, and the joy we will get from these experiences. So this is a real life example. Like I had to work at this. Old me would have been like, I can't go on a hike by myself. I'm not safe. I'm gonna look stupid. Like I'm not a hiker, but I did the damn thing. I did the thing, but it took a lot of work to get there. So, and you're gonna want to create that thought pattern with each of those categories to again, like really solidify. Actually, let's go back to that. So does this feel like it would be hard to do or easy to do? For some people, it depends on the category. Let's go back to our different areas. So body, wellness, rest and relax, these are all the categories you're gonna in-depth journal what it's gonna look like and feel like when you're living with those core desired feelings. So for what's an example? So for some people, rest might feel good to describe what it's going to look like because it might feel like relief. Like, gosh, I'm going to be creating this routine and this is going to be my set bedtime and wake time. And I'm going to, it's going to be easy to come up with what that's going to look like. Might not be easy to implement, but you can at least imagine pretty easily what it might look like. Versus maybe someone who's really struggling with depression, it might be really challenging to recall what it's going to feel like to be in a healthy space with your mental health. to really feel good if they've been depressed for a longer period of time. So that might be hard to even imagine. Um, but we're thinking of the positive opposite. If you know that depression feels like you don't have the energy to brush your teeth, and taking a shower feels overwhelming, and getting food feels like it's too much, and getting your kids going to their conferences, like, no way, don't have the energy for that. You know what that feels like? So think of the positive opposite. I would brush my teeth effortlessly. I would I would skip to my kids' conferences because I have so much more energy. And I would look forward to showers, and how it makes me feel afterwards. So if you're having challenges coming up with what that would look like, just think of the opposite of what your current challenges are in that category. And if you're coming up with guilt and shame, that's okay. Just acknowledge it and move on. So, you already did that one. Another way to really cement these core desired feelings into your body is to do it with ceremony. So drinking tea while thinking about what these core desired feelings feels like when you weave them into your life, and bring purpose to the tea. So a lot of people just think of tea, it's like a drink, right? Some people know some teas have medicinal purposes. But we want to bring more ceremony to it, more intentionality to it. Thinking about what's a flower or plant in nature that you feel drawn to or you often see. I have a magnolia tree right outside of my office that year round I find beautiful for a variety of different reasons. And this spring, as it was budding and the petals are flying everywhere in the wind, I thought, I wonder if there is some medicinal purposes to that flower. And there were. Um, and so I'm drying some of those petals, and I'm going to crumble them up and steep them in some hot water and see what that does. And even if it tastes disgusting, which I don't know if it will or not, there's intentionality behind it. There's a medicinal support that's happening and intentionality with what I am drinking and providing for my body. If you love the feeling of peppermint tea, just how it feels in your nasal passages and going down your throat. That might be a great one for you because it's just the sensations it brings to your body you really enjoy. So thinking about, is there something you tend to be drawn to, and then looking up, does it have some good health properties, or just what's a tea I can think of that you enjoy? And then creating purpose in what you're doing when you're connecting to those feelings while drinking your tea. And this is a practice of mindfulness. So we're paying attention to our five senses and how they're responding to those moments while you're in ceremony drinking your tea, reflecting on your core desired feelings. So our five senses: how does the tea smell? How does it taste? How does it look? What does it sound like when I'm, drinking it, or when I'm stirring the honey into it, or whatever. So you're being very present with yourself, and then connecting with those core desired feelings, and also using your five senses of, does anything change when you think of those emotions? So my examples of audacious, uninhibited, and safe, when I first started focusing on the safe one, I would notice I would retract a little bit because I grew up in a home where there was a lot of yelling and screaming, and there's a lot of situations that made me feel unsafe. So even asking for a feeling of safety, I felt retraction in my body. And so if you have that kind of response, you're noticing it. And over time, that repetition of calling in what you're asking for, eventually you're going to bring a sense of safety to your body. So the more you're doing this, you're rewriting your brain neural pathways. So if you were in our last workshop last week, we talked about neuroplasticity, which is where if you continue to have the same thoughts over and over and over again, you're changing your neural pathways, and that's how we're changing our thought patterns and processes. And then the next level we can take this to is picking colors to represent our core desired feelings. So there's colors assigned to emotions just already generally accepted, or you can pick your own. If you look up audacious, the color associated with that is red. If you look up the emotion safe, the color associated with that is green. So pick out clothes to represent these emotions that you're calling into purpose of your life. And then being intentional about dressing how you want to feel. So this can be very challenging for women because we've been told how we should dress by a religion or by our parents or by social media or because of our age or because of our body size or. But we want to, so when you're picking out those items that you want to represent how you want to feel, pay attention to what stories are coming up and think about, is this truth? Is this actually true? The story I'm hearing? And who says it's true? So if you want to wear a a jumper and you were told that looks sloppy, who told you that? Maybe your dad told you that at some point, or maybe your dad saw some girl in something like that and said she just looks like she doesn't take care of herself. Do you want to allow your dad to hold that value of that item of clothing? Do you want that person to be able to say how you dress and what you feel good in? So by reflecting on who who gave you that story and are you going to still give them that power, really helps you get clear on what feels good for you and how you dress, not what society or a church or a parental figure or a grandparent or a pastor, whatever. Like, we're not letting anyone say what feels good for our body except us and how we show up. Um, and then consider what other ways could you incorporate these colors into your life to symbolize the changes you're calling in. So, and with the clothes, picking clothes that help you feel how you want to feel, and bringing some of those colors in that are representational of those core desired feelings. But like with the red, for example, audacious, another way we can really be honoring our bodies as women is paying attention to where we're at with our cycles, our menstrual cycles. And I know that when I start my period, I feel all the feels. And I really want to feel empowered at that time. And so I will typically wear red, like intentionally. I have some red jeans I call my power pants. My good friends know if I show up in my red jeans, like, Camille just started a period. I'm not wearing red because blood is red. I'm wearing red because it's representational for me if I want to feel in my power in that moment as a female rather than disempowered. We are in a patriarchal society and we are not allowed to schedule our life around our menstrual cycles and how that really heavily affects a lot of our bodies and our function, like significantly for some. Our energy levels, our ability to concentrate. If we get pain, if we get cramps leading up to it, cramps during when we're ovulating, like there's so many pieces of our cycle that affect our function, and yet we live in a society where it's not even a consideration. It's not even a part of the conversation of, hey, when do you want to schedule that next meeting? So something else you can be doing to really honor your body, using these core desired feelings is, if you're able, when you're able, scheduling things according to where you're at with your cycle, if you're fortunate enough to have a predictable one. I'm in perimenopause, mine is way less predictable. But I do really try to honor my body in that way. Any thoughts about this? And we want to reflect on what's working versus what is not working. So, what in your life is representational of these emotions, these core desired feelings, and what is not? Some people identify core desired feelings because they do have that feeling in enough areas of their life where they're like, yeah, like I have it and I want more of it. And some people identify their core desired feelings, they barely have it, they don't have it, and they can only imagine what that would possibly feel like. So becoming clear on what areas of your life you're needing and wanting these changes, and keeping in mind that this process is about transformation of self and not total obliteration of what was that may no longer be serving you. Every single piece of you to this point has had value in leading to where you are today. Love and accept all pieces of who you are and recognize the pieces you want to say goodbye to. We want to do this with love, grace, and honor. Women can be their biggest criticism. I mean, we can really tear ourselves apart. And that's not necessary in this process. In fact, we really want to honor like all the things we've gone to, especially if it gets you to this place where you decide, I'm going to make change, I'm going to create change. And love the journey that's happened. And consider what kind of ceremony you could have to release what no longer is serving you. So if this exercise really brings to light, gosh, like I just cannot be in this space anymore in this area of my life. Um, what do you want to do to honor that change that's going to happen? So one idea I've seen is people will write down on a piece of paper what they want to release and then they'll burn it. Um, I would love to hear if anyone has any other ideas. Burn it or tear it up. Some people will write it on a whiteboard and then like erase it. Some people just fold it up into an envelope and tuck it away to reflect later on, like what did I really release there? I love this quote, don't ask what the world needs, ask what makes you come alive and go do it, because what the world needs is people who have come alive. And that's so true. There's no other you. The world needs you. The world doesn't need a carbon copy of someone who looks like they have it together or whatever. The world really needs every person in their most authentic self. So be gentle with yourself in this process. Part of going through this is really getting in touch with our emotions, what that looks like and feels like. Our mind and our bodies like to know what to expect. They like predictability. That's comforting. When you first start to create change with intentionality, it may feel unsafe because it's not familiar. And the more you practice, the more comfortable these changes will feel, and start with small areas to build your tolerance. So I'll use that jumper example. If the first time you put on a jumper, you know, you have all these criticisms and these thoughts in your head that I look frumpy, I don't look good. But then by the end of the day, you're like, wow, this is comfortable. And I feel like I'm really wearing something that represents who I am and how I want to feel. And, you know, it's really representational. Let's say you chose the color for the emotion, the core desired emotion. And by the end of the day, you're like, yeah, that actually felt pretty good, even though it was really scary. And then rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. You keep building up that tolerance. We want to stay in touch with your bodies, pay attention to its cues and clues, and bring your energy back to your body. So this emotions wheel also includes sensations associated with emotion. This is the same one I used last week. So these are what we call our root emotions: anger, fear, surprise, happy, sad, and disgust. And then here's a further expansion, synonyms of that feeling. And then here's the sensations that are oftentimes associated with that root emotion. So as you're starting to expand into making decisions that really honor and reflect those core desired feelings, because you want to get away from not feeling your authentic self and feeling lost in who you are, then really pay attention to how your body is responding and what is that teaching you. So for some, there might actually be anger, like, and someone actually used that word earlier. There can be anger because as you're resisting, I feel like this sounds so dramatic, but I'm going to say it anyways. As you're resisting the patriarchy, and you start to notice, like, oh, this is actually okay. I can do this. I can wear this romper, the whatever, and nothing bad is going to happen, and I'm actually going to feel good about myself. Why didn't I do this before? There could be some anger that comes up of like, why didn't I do this sooner? Anger for yourself or anger towards whatever messages you got to make you feel like you couldn't do that thing. Another example that can elicit anger is women who don't take time for themselves away from their kids. They just don't feel like they can. And once they start to do it, with intentionality, they're setting aside time for themselves. Maybe it's so uncomfortable that you're pissed you didn't start doing it sooner. For a lot of parents, when kids go off to college, they realize, like, I barely had time away from them, and now I don't know who I am without my kids. That happens to a lot of women. Who am I aside from being a mother? And, that can bring up a lot of sadness too, and a lot of fear and feeling scared. And, so really, really paying attention to those emotions that come up as you're starting to make these changes, and think about, like, what's the core of that? And it's a really good idea to be communicating your needs to your partner. So, saying to them, like, I am focusing on, um, I'll use my example. I want to parent from a place of, I want to be taking the kids on a hike, but I want to do it just me and the kids, and I need to feel safe doing it. And I'm scared to do it because there could be bears or predators out there. And so I'm going to be researching, like, what are good emergency kits to have with me while I'm hiking. Communicate how they can support. And if you're not looking for support, at least, like, what your goals are. And learning to prioritize yourself. For many women, it is extremely challenging to put themselves first due to the unrealistic expectations imposed on us. When it goes against what society says, really recognize that these standards are not realistic. And this can be hard to recognize. You might feel crazy, like, I shouldn't be tired. I shouldn't be tired. Everyone else does this. I shouldn't be overwhelmed. Everyone else does this. And so we can feel kind of crazy, like, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? Why am I always tired? But if it feels crazy that you're doing all these things, but expected to not be tired, like, that's your intuition. Pay attention to that and then adjust. Reflect on what part of your day feels the most stressful, or what areas of your life feel the most stressful. Going back to those categories we talked about earlier. And then building and resourcing activities throughout the day to support and prioritize your life. And we'll talk about how to do that. Some people are able to easily identify what part of their day feels the most stressful, and some are not. So for some people, it's just life in general. It's just hard. Moms with little kids, like, that's just hard for most of us, because they're constantly needing you. If you're breastfeeding, like, your body belongs to them. You're overtouched, overstimulated all the time. I had 3 kids in 4 years, 4 pregnancy in 4 years. And I was overtouched and overstimulated, like, constantly. And so it wasn't anything specific. It was just the demands of that part of my life. And so what I needed most was quiet and to not be touched. And so I set aside a certain period of the day where that absolutely critically had to happen. Like, that's something that I needed. So Does anyone have any examples of like things they already know for sure are things that specific parts of their day or their life that are the most stressful that they want to start working on? Um, and then in addition to making decisions based on your core desired feelings, you have to take a lot of steps throughout the day to resource and support your mind and body in the process. So a lot of people have heard of self-care, not self-soothing. So we're going to talk about the difference between the two. So self-soothing is specific things you do at the time of feeling distressed. Like I just had an awful work day and I have a pounding headache because of the stress and had like something I had to get turned in that was urgent. And then when I came home, I had to sign up for conferences and I had to get someone to soccer practice. And I have to get like, there's too many things. I know I'm going to be up late, even though I need to go to bed early. So it's an immediate right now need. That's when we're using self-soothing. So we're using breath work, practicing one deep breath at every red light, for example. You're building it in. Aromatherapy, so comforting smells like a candle or essential oils or flowers or a specific lotion, but things that are comforting to you. Taking a bath, pets, cooking, music, exercise, time with friends. It's going to be different for everybody. For some people, cooking is going to be exhausting. That's not going to be self-soothing. It's going to be just listening to music might be more comforting to them. So pick what's good for you. And then self-care is those things you can do more long-term. They're behavioral changes with intention to support yourself long-term. And sometimes these overlap and can be similar, but integrating healthy sleep habits, integrating a healthy diet for no reason other than using food to fuel your body, not using food to look a certain way, but really thinking of it as a way to give your body nutrients, energy, vitamins, nutrients, all the things you need to have a healthy body. Spending time with friends. If you're a busy mom, you know that it can be very challenging to build that into our lives. And so taking the time to do that, even if it's like, hey, bestie, let's hang out. Okay, I'll see you in 2 months. Like we have to prioritize that. Spending time in nature where there's lots of negative ions. Negative ions are the things that they reduce free radicals in our body. They produce oxytocin in our bodies, dopamine, like all of that healthy brain activity we get when we're outdoors just naturally. The opposite of negative ions is positive ions, which are found in environments like an office with cubicles, overhead lights, and no windows, no access to the outside. And then maybe looking for support groups or just connecting with people on a continuous, ongoing basis that can be relatable and supportive for you, which could be a specific friend or friends or family. So here's some different examples of things you can do to prioritize yourself. So going into your yard and picking flowers or just picking up some flowers for yourself at the grocery store. There's a place up in Arlington, the Flower Shed. I go there like at least once a month. She has the most beautiful flowers. It literally brings me joy every time I go. And it's about an hour from my house. So it's just the drive, the time by myself without having to answer to anybody and getting myself flowers. That whole process to me is very soothing. It's definitely time I take for myself. Sometimes I'll just not even plan it and then I'll be like, okay, I gotta get out of here and off I go. like we talked about earlier, just like that ritual of being in ceremony with yourself with tea and thinking about those core desired feelings. Or also a lot of people like to drink coffee in the morning, like, but really doing it with intentionality that I'm taking this time for myself. You're using your five senses, you're connecting to yourself. You're really thinking of it as I'm taking this time for myself to sit down for 5 minutes and drink this tea or this coffee. Listening to music, like mentioned before, listen to music that makes you feel good. Don't just turn the radio on. Like, come up with a playlist. If that feels like too much work, then this isn't a good one for you. But I have playlists categorized by feeling. I have my relaxing playlist. I have my sexy song playlist. That's just like really like sensual music. I have my oh, my relaxing one is called Chillax, and then the upbeat one is called Rocket. That's like my fun, loud, busy music. I have my kids playlist, listen to with my kids in the car. So I know based on how I feel or want to feel which playlist I'm going to choose from. And exercising, not for the purpose of looking a certain way, but taking care of your body and being really intentional and mindful around what's realistic for you and what's best for you. So me in perimenopause, I know that lifting weights is good for my body at this phase of life. That's not really something I've done, but I have incorporated it now. I keep dumbbells at different parts of my home where I tend to be standing for longer periods of time because I'm habit stacking. I'm trying to build it into things I'm already doing. Otherwise, I tend to forget or not prioritize. And so if I like I have some in my kitchen and while I'm waiting for the toaster on my toaster oven, I will be doing those free weights while I'm standing there. One could argue like, oh, we're not prioritizing setting a time aside for yourself. For me, it's not a matter of not prioritizing. I forget. I have to habit stack. I have to build things into what I'm already doing. That's what's successful for me. Um, or like having a treadmill in your living room, exercise bands at your desk, whatever that might look like. But having exercise that's going to be achievable for you. And then, oh, this is a cute little video. Look, it's writing cursive. So this one is maybe reading poetry. Like this looks like poetry penmanship to me. That one's supposed to symbolize poetry. But there are some beautiful small little poetry books that you can get that just can be on your nightstand and just read a couple before you go to bed or a couple first thing in the morning to just set the tone. Research supports that we have the most neuroplasticity the first hour that we're awake. And so if we can expose ourselves to how we want to feel that first hour rather than immediately grabbing for checking our email, checking social media, that is going to over time have a huge impact on your brain function and how you actually feel. I guarantee it. Like there's so much research that supports this. And so if you can find poetry books based on your core desired feelings or things that make you feel good. We talked about nature, like just making a choice to go outside, even if it's like a walk on a trail nearby. It doesn't have to be a hike off somewhere, but being mindful in that activity, noticing what are you smelling, what are you seeing, not having your phone out. Just be very present with what's going on around you. Taking a bath. And again, like we want to bring intentionality to it. We want to bring intentionality to all of these things. We're not just doing these things. So when you're having a bath, like I'm very connected to nature. So when I take a bath, I will go to my yard and I will pick petals from whatever flowers are blooming, or I will pick some cedar from the cedar tree because it smells good to me. I'll maybe pick some lavender leaves if the lavenders aren't blooming. Like I try to pick things that elicit this like happy feeling for me, and I'll just throw them in the water. And you can also throw Epsom salt in there. We're not just taking a bath, we're doing it with intention behind it to really take care of ourselves. Thinking about when you're cooking food for your family, like noticing we're using mindfulness. So how vibrant are the colors and what does it smell like and what's the textures, and just being very present with how beautiful the food is, how beautiful nature is, what amazing things that it creates for us. And so it becomes more than just I'm cooking food. It's being mindful in that practice. This little tree is to symbolize your family history. Some people really enjoy looking into genealogy, like ancestry.com or whatever, um, looking for ways that you can connect with your ancestry can be really powerful, especially for women. Like thinking about what are the women of my past, you know, what did I learn from them to do or to not do? And what skills or traits do I have because of them? That can connect to food. Like maybe you're going to cook food for your family that's really rooted in your heritage, and that helps you feel really connected to being a woman in a very specific way because maybe your grandmother taught you that dish. Or like doing activities and hobbies that you enjoy. I enjoy canning because I did it with my grandmother growing up. She had 8 kids, she had a farm. This is how she fed her family during the Depression. And I just love canning and thinking of my grandmother. She's passed a long time ago, but I feel connected to her. And this is a way that I can really connect to being a woman in a quote unquote stereotypical way, but that feels good for me because it's a choice. It's a choice for me. When she did it, it wasn't a choice. It was, this is what you did to feed your family, but it's a wonderful skill that I learned from her. I know that she never taught my male cousins how to can. It was always the girls, and I feel fortunate for that. Um, Face masks, like not for beauty standards, but with the intentionality that you're going to lay down for 10 minutes because that's what the packaging says to do so it doesn't fall off your face. And so you're creating 10 minutes for yourself where you're just being present and you don't have any obligations. You're just going to relax. This other one is like journaling, lighting a candle, something that smells good to you, like I mentioned earlier, aromatherapy. Doing meditation or a yoga practice, having an area in your home that just feels really calming and relaxing to you. Textures, the colors, everything just feels relaxing, like try and create that safe space. And then thinking about doing things for your inner child. You know, what would feel good for my inner child right now? Like, how can I heal her? How can I heal this girl that, maybe wasn't taught how to take care of herself. Maybe she was taught that women don't deserve to take breaks and that women's job was just to keep going. Like I'm honoring this little girl by taking time to walk through my yard and pick some flowers for myself. Any other activities you can think of that you enjoy doing or would like to do to help prioritize yourself? And this is also part of like rediscovering yourself. Okay, so like getting back into how you want to feel and the person that you are. And if you've lost touch with who you are, this is a great exercise to be experimenting and playing around with different things. I mean, this is not an all-inclusive list by any means. Um, you know, supplements can be a great one. Supplements that are neurotropics or adaptogenic herbs are so good for combating stress. So those are some strategies. And the next exercise you can do is getting clear on who you are as a woman, journaling it, and then reflecting on what does that look like, feel like, sound like, taste like, smell like, your 5 senses. So a lot of women get to this place where they're like, I don't know who I am aside from a mom and a wife and, you know, a journalist, whatever your career is, a teacher. There's a lot of pride in those things, and we're more than those roles that we're assigned, or even roles that we choose. You know, we choose to become a mom, we choose our career, but there's more to us. We're multidimensional people. And by seeing all of who we are can help us really uncover our full authentic selves and have that expression of ourselves and not feel so lost in all of these expectations. And so coming from the place of core desired feelings, that might help you uncover some of who you are. And then, what does it look like? So going back to what I mentioned earlier about dressing how you want to feel, being that outward expression. What does it feel like? Well, that's your core desired feelings. What does it sound like? It might sound like you are communicating to your partner what your needs are. It might sound like you're having boundaries with your employer because they've been dumping, obligations on you that require way more than a 40-hour work week, and you're starting to have boundaries and say no to that, or I need an adjustment to my wage or whatever. It might taste like you're making foods that are representative of your heritage or healthier food choices. It might smell like you're choosing a perfume that really smells like how you want to feel, just for some examples. So getting real clear, writing this out, and then it's really helpful to go back in a month, 6 months, and reflect on that process. And then thinking about self-love, different than self-care and self-soothing. So a lot of women attach self-worth to her body and what that looks like. So we want to be having acts of self-love every day. One way we can do this is put lotion on our body with mindfulness and really create a ritual with yourself of when you're putting the lotion on, you're thinking of, I love myself, and just being very mindful with that process. You're not just slapping it on as fast as you can, like being very present with yourself. Pick one body part that you do like. Like if you think you have nice boobs, like, okay, sending positive thoughts and words to that part of your body. And then over time, you're expanding somewhat your tolerance to using that kind of language with yourself. So a lot of women find using that kind of language, like it makes you seem conceited if you're saying all these nice things about your breasts or your hands or your feet or whatever. But this is loving yourself and giving yourself loving language to really offset that negative language that we're often taught from what social media says we're expected to look like. And consider measuring your body's beauty by simply what it is, not what you've been told. So your body is a representation of you, and just loving it for what it is. Using self-pleasure with the focus of self-discovery, self-awareness, and connecting to your sensuality, and for no other reason. You're just really getting to connecting to yourself, enjoying yourself in that way. It's not for any other purpose, just really connecting. Eating foods with mindfulness, considering how it's nourishing your body, and really thanking your body for how good of a job it's doing taking care of you. It's really incredible if you think about it, like all the things our body does every single second of every day to continue working. And so having that gratitude, that practice of gratitude for our bodies can be really important for having that loving language to ourselves. And keeping in mind that concept of talking to yourself the way that you would want someone to talk to you. So with a very loving, kind, accepting tone and words. And then repetition, repetition, repetition. That is what changes over time. So expect this process to be messy and sometimes hard work. A new awakening of self can often cause things and people that no longer serve us to break away as you grow into a new person. Continue to show up for yourself again and again. If some days you aren't, begin the next day or the next week, just to be sure to come back to yourself again and the commitment to this process. I love this quote. If you are outgrowing who you've been, you're right on schedule. Keep evolving. Intuition. This is something that anyone can have, but women, a lot of women, this is really a piece of their function. Women have an innate capacity to perceive and understand things often without conscious reasoning or concrete evidence or truth. This is often felt as a gut feeling, a sixth sense, a mother's intuition, and some research suggests that women are neurologically wired to be more intuitive. Learning to trust your intuition by recognizing when it was present will further reinforce your ability to make decisions based on self-actualization rather than social programming. Living in a patriarchal society devalues this part of who we innately are and lends towards the unrealistic expectations of us. So you may wonder, like, why is intuition a piece of this? Because we have this innate part of who we are that is often shoved down, and we lose connection with what it's really telling us and how to help us take care of ourselves and make decisions. It's something really unique to women. Oops, duplicate slide. And community, finding your tribe and your community. Women are meant to live in community together. We are connectors and lovers and caregivers. Think about who your people are and where they will be and be there. I love this quote. Take your attention down into the tiny, miraculous stitching of the life you're creating from nothing, and trust that each small thread is connecting you to the greater body of belonging. And belonging is something that most women have this deep yearning for. Belonging, connectedness, that's something we're really meant to be, is connected and community. And so, if you have those core desired feelings and what would bring that to you, that can help you figure out who your people are and where they are. If you're not sure, if you don't have a tribe. For example, if like I love to paint. I love to paint, I love to be in nature. And so I would be seeking some kind of painting class or painting group that's outside. Like I could find people that are my people there. I'm certain of it. And you can too. And then also reflecting on what other internal work you can be doing. Healing comes from the inside out, and just really do that work. Learn about your function so you can stand more firmly in your function. So women, a lot of our big emotions we're told are hysteria or overreacting, or if a woman speaks assertively and loudly, we're told that she is hysterical and she's yelling. Or if you are like a really critical thinker, maybe we're told that you're bossy. If you look at something like that, this is pulled from the Myers-Briggs. If you know that your personality type is part of it is the thinking part of the Myers-Briggs, which means you're an analyst. You are designed, your brain, the way you were born, we don't choose this. If part of your Myers-Briggs personality type is your analysis, you are going to critically analyze things, and that is a part of your function, and it does not mean you're bossy. So if you've been told over and over again, you're bossy because you're able to analyze something critically, now you know this and you're able to assertively know, no, there's nothing wrong with this part of my function. It's because I have this great skill in my personality. Or if you're a highly intuitive person, that's part of your personality type. You get the idea. So gaining some of this knowledge and information can be really helpful for just being more clear on who you are as a person, not because you're a woman. And then also stepping into, and I'm a woman, and I'm these things, and that makes me a powerful, incredible person. Another area the Myers-Briggs can be helpful is it identifies you for extrovert or introvert, which, isn't hard to know if you like to avoid people or be around a lot of people, but that can also help guide you on how do you just actualize those core discovered feelings in a way that's comfortable for you? So yes, it's going to be uncomfortable stepping outside the box from how you've been, but we also want to be honoring who we are as a person. So if you're an introvert, um, for actualizing a feeling of um, respect, I guess, you're probably not going to go create a situation where you're going to be in front of a shit ton of people and have to present to earn respect. Like you're going to find a way that's way more in your introverted type personality. Doesn't mean you can't do it, but it's helpful to know those things. Um, and then that's the end of the slide. So here's my website, services we provide. I would love to hear any questions anyone has or final thoughts on all of that. This is a really big topic. I try to condense it down. Okay.
While we are waiting for any last minute questions to come in, I'll just do my little spiel. For those of you who have been on our webinars before, then you already know the drill. But when you leave the Zoom, there's a quick 6-question survey. If you wouldn't mind taking some time to fill that out and let us know what you thought of tonight's class. And then if you have any ideas or suggestions for future classes, then we would love to hear them. Otherwise, we hope to see all of you at our future programs and presentations, and hopefully some more stuff with Camille and the Women and Family Wellness Studio.
Thanks, Christina.
We'll hang out for another minute. You guys have any questions? Camille, do you have any other webinars or any classes coming up at your facility?
We just did one about how to talk to kids about sex, sexual development that we'll be posting on our website soon. We have one on positive parenting for preschoolers coming up, and then compassion, fatigue, and burnout for
Oh, that's a good
uh,
one.
yeah, for
Yeah,
working
I
people.
definitely recommend that class. That was a good one.
Thank you. I think that's it. Yeah.
Well, the chat is pretty quiet. So if there's nothing else that you would like to add, then I would just say thank you guys for coming on tonight. Thank you, Camille, for another great presentation. I
Yeah.
hope that you guys will join us again in the future.
Okay. Thanks for having me. Thanks, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.